Hello, 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 and welcome to Nursing News You Can Use at 5, Nursing Business and News. I'm Tina Baxter, and I'm your host. Thank you for tuning in. For those of you that are on our Baxter Professional Services page, and those that are on our Nurse Shark Academy page on Facebook, and then also those that are watching us on YouTube, thanks for tuning in. And I wanted to say thanks to all of you that participated in our event at 3 today, our Fall Back in Love with Nursing event. How exciting! And so I have some additional announcements at the end for you as well. So please don't forget to like and subscribe and to join us each week for the Nurse Shark Academy podcast and also for our nursing news you can use at 5 on Wednesdays. Today is October the 4th, 2023, and our first affirmation and inspirational quote for today. If the mind thinks with a believing attitude, one can do amazing things. If the mind thinks with a believing attitude, one can do amazing things. Norman Vincent Peale. Anything that I've done that ultimately was worthwhile initially scared me to death. Anything that I've done that ultimately was worthwhile scared me to death, and I have to agree with that one as well. And our last affirmation and inspirational quote: great things are not done by impulse, but by a series of small things brought together. Great things are not done by impulse, but a series of small things brought together. That ends our affirmations and inspirational quotes for today, again from the Lauren Dratch Inspirational Calendar. All right, let's get into it because we have a heavy, heavy news cycle today. Woo, there's a lot going on in the world. So let's start with our first article. This is coming from out of South Florida. This is NBC6 South Florida, and they're reporting on what we previously had talked about was the Nightingale scandal. If you remember that fake South Florida nursing school diploma scheme. Well, now it's led to some federal convictions. Here we go. So, 20 people pled guilty or were convicted for their participation in a scheme that sold fake nursing school degrees from South Florida based schools, prosecutors said Thursday. The defendants, comprised of Florida residents and residents of other states, were charged with operating and recruiting three nursing schools: the Sacred Heart Institute in Fort Lauderdale, Siena College of Health in Lauderdale, and Palm Beach School of Nursing in West Palm Beach, in a scam that sold more than 7,600 fraudulent nursing diplomas. All three schools have been closed. According to the press release from the U.S. Attorney's Office of Southern District of Florida, the bogus diplomas and transcripts qualified purchasers to sit for the National Nursing Board exam and, after passing it, to obtain licenses and jobs in various states as RNs and LPNs, VNs. The defendants were charged with conspiring to and committing wire fraud. Those who were convicted were sentenced to over 21 months in prison. Most of the defendants will face sentencing later this year. So those that were convicted and those that pleaded guilty were already sentenced. So according to this, nurses got jobs across the country, including a hospital in Georgia, a Veterans Affairs Medical Center in Maryland and New York, a skilled nursing facility in Ohio, and an assisted living facility in New Jersey. The FBI and Health and Human Services Inspector General worked jointly on this investigation, dubbed the Operation Nightingale, in honor of Florence Nightingale, the founder of modern nursing. So just to let you know that there is continuing to be fallout from that scandal. Okay, let's go ahead and move to our next story. This is coming from Ignite's Long-Term Care News. Again, we've been following the ongoing story about the federal nursing home staffing mandate, and now a bill has been introduced by Minnesota Congresswoman, a Minnesota Congresswoman, that would stop the CMS from implementing its nursing home staffing requirements. So, protecting rural seniors' access to care, H.R. 5796 would prohibit federal officials from finalizing the draft rule introduced on September 1st and convene a nursing home workforce advisory panel instead. According to Representative Michelle Fishback, Republican from Minnesota. I am deeply disappointed CMS continued to move forward with this rule given the public knows the reservations regarding its efficacy. Fishback was referencing a CMS-backed study looking for ideal staffing standards that ultimately found that there was, quote, no single staffing level that would guarantee quality care. So, according to this proposed bill, the Protecting Rural Seniors Access to Care Act will keep CMS from implementing this rule until it can prove it will not result in the closure of skilled nursing facilities, will not harm patient access, and will not make workforce shortage issues worse in areas that are already struggling. So the bill, which had one co-sponsor at introduction, is creating an instant buzz in the long-term care sector, which has expressed concerns about the ability to staff up during the ongoing workforce crisis that has disproportionately affected rural providers. So we will see what happens when this occurs, and we'll see when they vote on this bill, and we'll keep an eye on this bill as it moves forward. So if you want more information about this, please look that up on McKnight's Long-Term Care News for this article. And other interesting news, those of you who may not know, but cannabis advocates may now know, that the American Nurses Association has now added cannabis nursing as a specialty. So the American Nurses Association last week formally recognized cannabis nursing as a nursing specialty. Jennifer Minzik Kennedy, president of the American Nurses Association, said cannabis nursing deserves to be viewed as a specialty. She stated as saying, this recognition highlights the essential role and special contribution of cannabis nurses to the healthcare system and promotes enhanced integration of cannabis therapies for healthcare consumers across diverse healthcare settings. The American Nurses Association says that there's a pressing need for more research on the efficacy of marijuana. The American Cannabis Nurses Association group focused on expanding the knowledge of the therapeutic uses of cannabis hailed the announcement. So we'll see what happens. New specialty in nursing. Let's talk about it. If you got opinions, let me know. Okay. This was another interesting article. This is coming out of FoxNews.com. And it says less than half of nurses are fully engaged at work, while many are unengaged, a new report reveals. It says less than half of U.S. nurses say they are fully engaged while on the job, and about 14% say they are unengaged. This is according to the 2023 National Nursing Engagement Report from the Nebraska Marketing Research and Consulting Company, PRC. It surveyed 1,923 RNs from 37 hospitals across the country. Okay, so we'll have to look at this with a little bit of a grain of salt because it is a relatively limited sample size, but we'll get into it. So it says the survey posed 34 questions to nurses about nurse quality indicators, engagement, burnout, and retention. So the results released earlier this month show that the nurse quality indicators, the nurses assessed the following: fundamentals of quality nursing care, autonomy, teamwork and collaboration among nurses, adequacy of resources and staffing, interpersonal relationships, and leadership access and responsiveness. It goes on to say that less than half of the U.S. nurses, again, are fully engaged while on the job, and 14% say they are unengaged. Fully engaged nurses are defined as being, quote, emotionally and intellectually connected to their hospitals and invested in their success. They positively influence patient care, have fewer absences from work, and actively volunteer to mentor other nurses and advocate for their hospital. Engaged nurses, quote, play it safe on the job, according to the study. Unengaged nurses are the ones who look for a shift to end, are focused on the next break, who call off during times of stress, and for whom a patient is a diagnosis or a task. The report's findings highlight the need to provide nurses with more opportunities for staff development, engagement with leadership, and autonomous nursing practice. According to Candace Whelan, an advanced practice registered nurse and assistant clinical professor at the Sue and Bill Gross School of Nursing in Irvine, California, she was not involved in this study. She goes on to say that nurses typically work in a fast paced, high stress environment. To increase nursing engagement, they must be given time and opportunities to participate in decision making. Nurses, so she goes on to say healthcare organizations must also support nurses' professional development so that they are prepared to discuss the realities of the work environment with key stakeholders and advocate for their unique departmental needs. So this is lending credence to what we just talked about in our Fallback in Love with Nursing event. There is more to this story, so I encourage you to go to foxnews.com and look at the rest of this article. But it is an interesting article. But again, I want to say that it is a relatively small sample size when you look at the number of nurses that are in our country. All right. But that brings us to other things that are happening. And let's go to Alabama, because according to Alabama Daily News, nearly 39,000 Alabama nurses are likely to leave the profession in the next 5 years. A total of 38,727 experienced nurses in Alabama indicated that they intend to leave the profession within the next 5 years, according to a new survey conducted by the Alabama Board of Nursing. Shared during a recent meeting of the Legislative Healthcare Task Force, the survey also revealed that based on current trends, nurse vacancies in the state could grow to as high as 14,000 by 2027, nearly double the current nurse shortage of 7,200. According to Peggy Benson, executive director of the Alabama Board of Nursing, she says, "We can't lose 38,000 experienced nurses and not be affected greatly in the state." Broken down further, Alabama hospitals are currently short 5,422 registered nurses, 1,500 licensed practical nurses for long-term care, and 300 general licensed practical nurses. While the ABN did project about 25,000 new graduates will apply for nursing license in Alabama during the same 5-year time frame, as well as an additional 8,500 from out of state, those numbers would not be sufficient to counter the projected losses. As nurses in Alabama are paid the second lowest median salary in the nation at $56,570, just ahead of South Dakota, which is paid $55,660. Many have taken on second jobs, further contributing to burnout and eventual retirement. Of the 84,000, or roughly almost 85,000 Alabama nurses that participated in the survey, 58,000 of them indicated that they hold a second job, 37,000 of which spend at least 32 hours a week at that second job. So that becomes a problem because nursing is already stressful enough, and then you have to add on to that a second job just to make ends meet, take care of your family. So a task force member, David White, a senior policy advisor with the governor's office, said if they're losing 38,000, but presumably some could be persuaded to stay if they got more pay. Benson says pay has always been an issue, but the Board of Nursing tries not to get into pay, which is, obvious. They said Alabama is on the lower side of the pay structure, but I don't know that would keep the nursing workforce. I think we're going to have to look at many things. Pay is one of them, but many things related to the schedules, related to how you're legalizing the older nurses and those kinds of things. And so that is, again, becoming an issue. So I just want to say it's not just happening in the larger cities and things like that, but in the rural areas, there is a very big crunch. It looks like they're looking at legislative revisions to the Nurse Practice Act. They propose allowing the Board of Nursing to apply for and award grants to provide mental health and substance abuse counseling and testing for nurses to return to practice. They also want increased work, burnouts, and stress and substance abuse among nurses have dramatically increased. They also had a proposal to pass legislation that would fund a practical nursing dual enrollment program for high school students. There's also a proposal to provide supplemental funding in the state's educational loan repayment program. So there are some of the things that they're asking for. They're also asking for an additional $2 million for continued development of its licensing management system, which he said is inadequate to meet demand. So they are actually advocating for nursing in Alabama. So we'll see how this works out for them. Okay. So let's talk about this next article. Again, there's so much going on in healthcare right now. Like I said, there's so much happening and there's a lot to talk about. So just stay tuned for this. All right. So this is nurses ask lawmakers for staffing mandates. Hospital leaders disagree. This is coming out of Illinois. So it says a 2020 Illinois Nursing Workforce Center report finds that the state will be short 15,000 nurses by 2025. State lawmakers have two House committees heard testimony about the shortage. They heard from nurses, advocates, and hospital leaders on staffing issues. According to Illinois Nurses Association Legislative Committee Chairperson Kristen Perez, we're all trying to give the patients the best care that leads to the best possible outcomes, but we're being put into impossible situations daily. Situations, shortages, moral dilemmas that are created by hospitals, their associations, and their administrators. To fix the problem, Perez and her fellow nurses want lawmakers to mandate nurse-to-patient staffing ratios. She goes on to say that that they're looking at the problem. Proposals called the Safe Patient Limits Act and allow the State Department of Health and Attorney General to enforce those staffing ratios. The administrator person, Mr. Wilhelm, says that, who represents the hospital administration, says that administrators are fearing that staffing mandates could make it harder to provide quality care. They said we'll be forced to cut back and possibly eliminate vital services, as I mentioned, to some of the most vulnerable residents in Illinois and county because we do not have the financial resources to hire more nurses. And that was Humboldt Park Health President and CEO Jose Sanchez. So back and forth, we'll see what happens. There are both House and Senate versions of the bill, so we'll be keeping an eye on that coming out of Illinois. Which brings us to this. Why not go back home? And let's talk about Indiana. This is an article that was on NPR. And it says nurses ask for legislative support to address burnout, turnover, driving higher healthcare costs. So nurses want lawmakers to consider how low burnout and turnover lead to high healthcare costs for hospitals and patients. The State Nurses Association is advocating for a chance to be a part of the decision-making process for staffing plans. The Indiana State Nurses Association submitted written testimony last week to the state's Healthcare Cost Oversight Task Force and said improving working conditions for nurses can reduce overall healthcare costs. Rhonda Cook, a lawyer and lobbyist who represented ISNA at the second meeting of the task force, said current staffing practices are making burnout and turnover worse. As facilities cut nurses, it leads to further nurse shortages because patient-to-nurse ratios increase and longer work hours are usually required, and nurses then suffer from burnout. The ISNA is asking lawmakers to reintroduce a bill from the last session that requires hospitals to establish staffing councils that includes working nurses in the development of staffing plans. The bill would also prohibit hospitals from requiring nurses to work, quote, mandatory overtime. According to Cook, we think that putting these types of measures in place will allow nurses to have a better work life balance and will address nurse burnout and keep them in their jobs. Cook says these safeguards could protect nurses from burnout and prevent the turnover that leads to higher costs. So, if you want to learn more about that, please go to the story on IPB News and WFYI. All right. So, kudos to ISNA for stepping up for us. In Ohio, this is coming out of Ohio. Ohio legislation proposes nurse to patient ratios. Can you sense a theme here? New Ohio legislation introduced would set staffing minimums for nurses in all Ohio hospitals, along with incentives for people to go into the nursing field. According to Ohio Representative Haraz Ganbari, and I apologize if I butchered your name, Republican for Perrysburg, the nurse staffing shortage in Ohio is endangering Ohioans seeking medical care and the nurses caring for them. He introduced the Workforce and Safe Patient Care Act, which does not have a bill number yet, but it would establish staffing standards in all Ohio hospitals, which only allows deviations in, quote, extraordinary circumstances in the interest of patient care. The legislation would create a $20 million loan to grant program for nurses who complete 5 years of nursing services in the state of Ohio, either at the bedside or nurse education. It would also preserve nursing staff committees, create a reporting system to file complaints against the hospitals that don't meet minimum levels, and provide whistleblower protections. So this will be interesting to see what happens with this bill, and we'll certainly keep an eye on that. But if you want to know more information, you can head on over to Dayton Daily News and get more information from this story. Which brings us to this. This is the big news of the day, and everybody's talking about it, so we're going to too. This is from the USA Today, and we kind of talked about it earlier, but this is the Kaiser Permanente strike. And it says more than 75,000 Kaiser Permanente healthcare workers and support staff in 6 states and Washington, D.C. are demanding better pay and more robust staffing. And they have a 3-day strike beginning today. They officially went on strike today. The Coalition of Kaiser Permanente unions said the walkout is planned to protest, quote, unfair labor practices at unsafe staffing levels at hundreds of Kaiser hospitals and facilities, which union officials said would be the largest healthcare worker strike in American history. So we've got workers from California, Colorado, Oregon, Maryland, Washington, Virginia, and Washington, D.C. that have walked off the job until they can reach a new contract. Their contract ended Saturday, and the sides have not been able to come together. So, of course, as typical in these situations, one side is obviously blaming the other. That always happens. But what the strike will mean is that Kaiser said that operations will remain normal at hospitals and health facilities, even though the contract has lapsed. They do have a contingency plan in place. The workers are demanding better pay and shared bonuses. So they're asking for a 4-year contract with pay hikes of 7% during the first 2 years and 6.25% in years 3 and 4. They also want workers to be eligible for an annual performance bonus that will equal a percentage of their annual wages if goals are met. In past years, workers have been eligible for bonuses up to 3% of wages if all performance goals are met. So we'll see what happens with this. They're also calling attention to unsafe staffing levels. And on Labor Day, it says nearly 24 union members were arrested and released after a march and protest that ended at the Kaiser Mental Hospital in Hollywood. So there are things that are going on across the country. Okay, but now that we've talked about things that are happening here, oh wait, there's a couple other we'll get back to that. Let's talk about things that are happening across the pond. So this is an article that talked about the triage nurses and facing workplace pressure. This is from Nursing Times, and this is what I find interesting, is because as we're talking about safe staffing and keeping the staffing ratios up, it is not just a unique experience to the United States. We're also having issues in other places. So this is from the UK and Nursing Times, and it says triage by A&E nurses negatively impacted by workplace pressures. So this was a study that was done, and it says researchers reviewed data from 28 international studies, including the UK, to identify the factors that impacted the decisions made by emergency nurses when triaging patients. They found that emergency nurses routinely went beyond using triage algorithms when assessing patients, using clinical reasoning and intuition to determine a patient's acuity score. However, the researchers also found that accurate decision-making by A&E nurses during the triage process was negatively impacted by workplace pressures. High patient numbers, poor staffing, absence of a suitable space in which to carry out assessments, and a lack of flow from the triage area all negatively affected the decision-making process, they found. So, writing in the journal International Emergency Nursing, the study authors recommended that managers should prioritize accurate triage over emergency department metrics. Nurses included in the study also reported receiving insufficient training to supply the knowledge and experience necessary to make safe and effective triage decisions. So again, this is something that was pointed out. You can certainly go to Nursing Times to read this article, but this is something that was pointed out: low staffing, not the appropriate equipment or venue to do the assessments, distractions, all these things that we know, and it's been said time and time again, repeatedly. My question is, when are those in administrations and hospitals and facilities going to pay attention? That's my question. So let's go just up a little bit north of us and talk about this story. So this is coming out of Quebec. And remember a while ago, we did talk about the lawsuit that was pending in Quebec because of the low passage rate of their new NCLEX exam. Well, this is what they're saying. So Quebec nursing license exam to blame for high failure rate, according to a report. This is from the Canadian Press. It says, contrary to what the Order of Nurses of Quebec has been claiming since the start of the controversy surrounding massive examination failure rates, the validity of the order's exam, not the pandemic, is at fault. That's the conclusion in a new report tabled Tuesday from a commissioner tasked with ensuring fairness in entry exams to Quebec's professions. In addition to refuting the order's main argument, Andre Garapi, I apologize, I know I said this wrong, calls on the commission, the order, to get to work to correct the flaws in its examination. It also seriously questions the relevance of using the American examination as desired by the order. So they've noted that there was a high failure rate in September 2022 and the March 2023 exams. He goes on to explain that the flaws and weakness of the exam, including its validity, its reliability, and the establishment of its passing mark. So after seriously considering the order's argument that the candidates have valuable hours of laboratory training, and Garapi concluded these are impressions arising from the information. So based on the surveys that they conducted with nursing establishment and reviewing this, they're saying that the exam's no good and they got to fix it. So we'll see what happens to those poor students that weren't able to pass. Will they be allowed to try again, and will they have to pay to try again? That's another good question. Okay, so let's move on. And we're going to move on to this new article because I thought this was interesting. This is something that we kind of reported on before in other states, but now they're saying in New Jersey that people with disabilities were improperly placed in nursing homes, according to a report. It says that Disability Rights New Jersey, the state's protection and advocacy system for persons with disabilities, recently released the results of an investigation into nursing homes during the COVID-19 pandemic. The report highlights that among those living in nursing homes who died from COVID-19 were a large number of people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. People, Disability Rights New Jersey argues, should have been there in the first place. They go on to say that these are institutions, these are hospital-like settings, and a lot of them are really dismal. Okay. The state has to know that who these people are, where they are, and they really have to know what these people want and need in their lives, according to Gwen Orlowski, the executive director. So that's New Jersey. The reason why I'm bringing this up, because there is another article that was in the Independent. Oh, no, wait a minute, that's not it. Hold on. Okay. I want to make sure I got that correct. Oh, I know where it is. Here it is. Another article. This is coming from Colorado. There we go. So it says adults with disabilities segregated in Colorado nursing homes, according to the federal government in a lawsuit. So this isn't something new. This is something that's happening across the country, and this is why I'm bringing this out. So it says the U.S. Department of Justice has sued Colorado, alleging that the state unnecessarily segregates adults with disabilities into nursing homes. The civil lawsuit claims that Colorado failed to offer sufficient community services to help people with disabilities, including older adults, live in their own homes. This led to people being forced into nursing homes, which the Justice Department says violates the Americans with Disability Act and Supreme Court decision in Olmstead versus LC. So the case was filed in the U.S. District of Colorado on Friday, with the state named as the defendant. So you're seeing that this is an issue that's not just affecting one state, but it's affecting multiple states. And so this is something we'll keep an eye on. But if you want more information about this, you can certainly go to the website here. And again, there's no court filings as of yet to review, but you can certainly look at this. This is, sorry, I apologize for that. I was looking for the citation, and for some reason it got cut off. But anyway, if you want the link to this, I certainly will provide it. But this is an interesting story. And they cut the link off somehow. I don't know why they did that. All right, moving on. Let's get to our next story. And this one is coming out from The Guardian. And it says, an investigate now. Ex-health minister urges probe into nursing regulator after the Independent expose. So this is from the Independent, and not The Guardian, excuse me, but the Independent. And I want to say that this is another thing that's happened across the pond, but I find it interesting that other countries are able to address some things, yet we tend to be a little bit more lax here in the U.S. But here it goes. So a former health minister has urged the government to probe whistleblower concerns about the UK's nursing regulator exposed by the Independent. Labour MP Sir Ben Bradshaw has written to the Department of Health and Social Care, the Professional Standards Authority, the PSA, and the Equality and Human Rights Commission, EHRC, urging them to investigate serious allegations against the regulator, the Nursing and Midwifery Council. These include claims of staff accused of serious sexual, physical, and racial abuse being allowed to keep working on the wards. So this is staff members who have been accused have been able to continue to work. So this came to light from a dossier that was leaked to the Independent. It uncovered a secret report that warned last year that the regulator had, quote, a culture of fear in which its own staff were afraid to raise concerns. Allegations from a senior whistleblower also claimed racism within the MHC is going unaddressed and is impacting how it regulates complaints against nurses and midwives. Now, I have to say, this came out at a very timely for me because I just saw on Twitter the other day a nurse that was obviously not from the U.S. Making complaints about racial discrimination that she was experiencing in the hospital, and it was very interesting to hear the responses from people about that. But to hear that anecdotally and then come up with this report, I was like, this is very timely. So, according to this, it says the 2008 review carried out by the former Council for Healthcare Regulatory Excellence, which became the PSA, found the MHC's fitness to practice processes and the way in which it decided on complaints were not robust enough to protect the public. It also warned about delays in investigations and that it was not clear or transparent in its decision making. In the leaked dossier, the senior whistleblower warned that NMC was lacking transparency and had not shared an independence expose into its culture of fear. So we'll see what happens. In response, the PSA said it contacted the whistleblower and would respond to Sir Ben. A Charity Commission spokesperson said, "We have received information detailing a number of serious concerns relating to the governance of the Nursing Midwifery Council. We have opened a regulatory compliance case to further assess this information and to determine our next steps alongside other bodies. In line with our guidance, the charity has submitted a serious incident report to us on this matter." So we'll see what comes out of that. We'll keep an eye on that, a developing story as well. Okay. I wanted to talk about this story here because we had previously mentioned this nurse that has been accused of harming patients. And so now we need to talk about it. This lawsuit coming from the Trib Life, this is a nurse in Pennsylvania that we've been following her story. Says she claims she killed a third victim with insulin and blames the Lower Borough nursing home. So, a woman charged with killing 2 nursing home patients in Butler County by overdosing them with insulin faces new allegations that she caused a third such death at Lower Borough Healthcare Facility when she was a supervisor. The claims are part of a wrongful death lawsuit filed Tuesday against the Bel Air Healthcare and Rehabilitation Center that accuses Heather Presdy of killing Marianne Bauer, 68 years old grandmother of 7 with multiple sclerosis, by administering a lethal dose of insulin and then sending a sympathy card and gift to the family. Bauer, who died on September 28, 2021, was a resident of Bel Air. The lawsuit in Allegheny County Commission Pleas Court marked the first indication since Presdy was arrested in May by the State Attorney General's office that there might be additional victims among the 11 nursing homes where she has worked since 2018. As of now, the new allegations are only civil and not criminal. Brett Hambright, a spokesman for the Attorney General, refused Tuesday to address details in the lawsuit other than to call the agency's ongoing investigation, quote, very active. The complaint goes beyond alleging ghoulish behavior by Presdy, 41, of Harrison, who remains in jail in Butler County and is not named as a defendant. It targets Bel Air, claiming the facility's administrators failed to properly vet Presdy for problems before hiring her as an assistant director of nursing, and then not only brushed off concerns among staff about the woman, whom some colleagues called the, quote, killer nurse, but disciplined co-workers who spoke about how Presdy cared for residents. Phil Dilicente, one of Presti's criminal lawyers, declined to comment. So there's more information on this case. I would go ahead and look this up if you wanted to hear more, but we'll be keeping an eye on this and to see if there's additional alleged victims that come forward, and we'll see what happens and follow this criminal case as well as this now civil case. All right, how about some good news? Always looking for that, right? But before we get to that, I did have one additional story, and this is because we were talking about cannabis nursing and things like that. This is another question that we have. Let's talk about it. This is from the Center Daily Times, and this is: a man was allegedly denied a job at Center Care for using medical marijuana, and now he's suing. This just came out. So a nursing home in Center County was sued Tuesday by a man who claimed he was turned away from a job after telling an interviewer he uses medical marijuana. Seth Unger of Center County was prescribed medical marijuana for his anxiety, his attorneys wrote in a 10-page federal lawsuit. The disorder, the lawsuit argued, gave him protection under the 1990 law that prohibits discrimination on the basis of disability. So here's where the laws are not keeping up with what's going on. He says his interview for the position, his attorneys wrote, was terminated after he said he uses medical marijuana. His application was rejected. Unger alleged that it amounted to discrimination under the Americans with Disability Act. So we will continue to see how this plays out, but these are things that we are now facing. And so if you have questions about any of those things, now's a good time for you to be contacting your risk management and your legal department going forward. But we'll start to see more stories like this happen as medical marijuana now becomes more available. Okay. All right. So let's get to the good news. And that is coming from my alma mater and Taylor University. They posted in their newsletter or their newspaper, The Edge. It says Taylor University's rising nursing program is still undergoing approval processes before its tentative launch in the fall of 2024. The university is unable to announce an official start date until appropriate steps are taken with the Indiana State Board of Nursing. Provost Gerald Maxwell said the curriculum will first need to go through the university approval process before being accepted by the state board. Afterward, prospective students will be able to officially begin their Bachelor of Science in Nursing degree. Dean of Nursing Karen Elzy said the university is still developing the content and framework for the major. The new major will be housed in the Nussbaum Science Center, the place that I'm very familiar with. The building is currently being renovated to properly accommodate it. The university will phase out the nursing 3+1 program once approved for the nursing program is complete. Current students in the nursing 3+1 program, a dual degree program between Taylor and Indiana Wesleyan University, will be allowed to continue with their degree. Depending on the student's progress, some will be able to switch into the new major. Once the nursing program is approved, it will need to be accredited at both the state and national level. This process ensures a consistent quality of education and that adequate resources, appropriate content, course content, and necessary facilities are available. Parkview Health partnered with Taylor University to provide financial support and additional locations for clinical placement, both necessary aspects of the program. So I'm very excited. Taylor University has really great, I would say really great healthcare related programs. I mean, I have a bachelor's degree in biology from there to prove it. So excited about that, and might have gotten my nursing degree there had they had that program then, but though I'm very grateful for Anderson University. So excited to see my alma mater get a nursing program. That's so exciting to me. And I'm looking here, it's kind of funny, I'm looking here at a picture of someone working at her desk, and I'm like, I think I remember seeing a desk like that. Things don't change. All right, so that's great, wonderful. Let's move on to other good news story. Good news, but sad news as well. I want to honor, as our nurse making a difference, the life and legacy of Iris Reed Shannon, trailblazer in public health nursing who died at the age of 98. Dr. Iris Reed Shannon peacefully departed this earthly life on July 15, 2023, in Chicago, Illinois, at the age of 98. She was born in March 21st, 1925, in Chicago, Illinois, to her parents, Ira Paul and Iola Sophia Williams Reed. She lived a life of commitment to education and service to the health of all people, especially those who were marginalized. Her commitment to education led her to obtaining a Bachelor's of Science in Nursing from Fisk University and Meharry Medical College, an AM in Public Health Nursing, Supervision, and Teaching from the esteemed University of Chicago, and a Doctor of Philosophy in Urban Planning and Policy from the University of Illinois in Chicago. Dr. Shannon was granted an honorary doctorate in public service from Elmhurst College. She utilized her education and wisdom to serve as an exemplary public health nurse, academician, educator, trailblazer, and advocate. Some of the highlights of her career of service include serving as an instructor of public health nursing at Meharry Medical College, a teacher, nurse, and health coordinator for the Head Start program at the Chicago Board of Education, director of community nursing, the Miles Square Neighborhood Health Center. During her 30 years of service at Presbyterian St. Luke's Hospital Rush, she served as co-director, nurse associate programs, chairperson, community nursing, acting chairperson, assistant professor, public health nursing at the University of Illinois, associate professor, community health nursing, and health system manager, adjunct faculty, School of Public Health in the University of North Carolina, and serving as the president of the American Public Health Association in 1987. Her faith and membership in the Congregational Church of Park Manor in Chicago provided her strength for her journey. Her beloved parents, Ira and Paul and Iola Sophia Williams Reed, her siblings, Bernard, and her husband, Robert Allwood Shannon, preceded her in transitioning from this earthly life. She left behind a host of cousins, colleagues, and friends who are grateful for the privilege of having shared their lives with her. I want to say that she is our nurse making a difference. Anytime I find that there's a nurse who's done so much and have met with people, I want to make sure that we highlight them. All right, so that ends our news show for today. Whew, I tell you, there was a lot to get through, but I'm glad we got through it, and I want to always bring you great content and great news so that you know what's happening in the healthcare world today. So let's get on to a couple of our announcements really quick. So coming up, we have on October the 25th, I want to make sure I get this right. We have some new events coming up. I'm very excited about it. I always get excited when we get to have new events. So we have coming up our Jumpstart Your Nurse Business Workshop, which will be October the 25th from 12 to 3. If you want to join us for that event, right now, tickets are $37. That price is only good for a limited time. Right now, we're running a promotion. It's $37. If you want to get VIP and backstage, it's $47, which gets you all the goodies and video replay and workbook and all of that. Again, but that only lasts about a week. So on the 14th, that goes away. Regular price of $197 will be there. So I would sign up for today if you can, as soon as possible. And then we also have on Saturday, October the 28th, our How to Start a Nurse Assistant Training School Master Class. And those that want to attend that, the price is still $37 for a week. And then if you want VIP, it's $47, and you get the replay and workbooks and all the other stuff that goes with it. And then if you don't sign up, don't get the early bird special, price goes up to $197. So I just want to encourage you to do that. Very excited about these two new courses. We're not really new, but revamped courses that we have coming up. Excited about it. I can't wait to get into it. So I just want to share that with you. Those are all of my announcements. Don't forget that we have on our Back to Professional Services page, we have a CPR training coming up this month. We have TB basic validation training coming up this month as well as the Black Chamber. I almost forgot the Anderson-Madison County Black Chamber of Commerce Convention Week is starting next week. And we have a lot of activities coming up. So please make sure that you check the Facebook page for the Anderson Madison County Black Chamber of Commerce that will culminate into our women's conference, which is be the 14th. I will be there. Come check us out at our booth on the 14th. And then also we have the uh, banquet that will be on that evening on Sunday afternoon. So if you would like tickets for the banquet, come see me. I do have tickets available for the banquet for October the October the 15th. All right, that's it. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, leave a comment. Bye bye for now.